Welcome to part 2 of rebuilding the forks on your Buell 1125R and CR. For starters, you will need a set of stands, both rear and front. Whether they're Pitbull, T-Rex, or generics, they will all work the same. In my case, I'm just using a set of generic eBay stands. I cannot speak for all of the Buell 1125 CRs and R models, but for my bike being an 09, it came with rear spool sliders attached to the rear swing arm. So that's what I lifted the bike off of. Before you go ahead and lift the front end of the bike up with the stand, you want to make sure the front tire is aimed directly forward, and I suggest removing the front fender just so you don't risk damaging it while you use the stand. There's 4 bolts in total to remove the front fender. They're going to be T30 Torx, 2 on the left side, 2 on the right. With the front fender removed so you don't risk damaging it, you can go ahead and begin to lift the bike up with the front stand. How a front stand works is it goes up in the steering stem underneath the lower triple tree, and just go ahead and push down and the stand does all the work for you. Again, these aren't fancy stands, they're just a set off eBay for a little over $100. Because the model is shown I'm working on is a CR and not a full fairing R model, I cannot direct you 100% to whether or not you have to remove your full front fairing before you disassemble your forks. If in fact you do, you will have to remove your mirrors, both of them, along with 2 T30 Torx bits below and beneath the headlights. You may or may not need to remove the 8 windscreen T30 Torx bits as well. Regardless whether you have the CR or the R model, the next step after removing the front fender, you're going to want to remove the brake pad bolts. There's 2 of them, and they are a 3/16 Allen key or an Allen socket. Now, because I previously painted my red caliper black, with duplicolor ceramic caliper paint, it has made the brake caliper bolts difficult to remove. So if yours is similar to mine, you will need a set of needle nose pliers to remove the pins. Once the brake pad pins are removed, you can then go on to the two caliper mounting bolts. These are a 5/16 Allen key or an Allen socket. You do not want to remove them completely yet. You may remove one of them, but at least leave one in place. The reason you leave one in place is to hold the caliper in place. The next step you want to do is get mechanics wire, or like I did, an old coat hanger, and cut it up. You'll want to run it through the right side fairing fan shroud. It can kind of be a pain to maneuver it through there, but the reason you want to do this is so that you wrap it around the caliper and you hold the weight of the caliper with the wire and not on the brake hose. If you hold the weight of the caliper on the brake hose, you do risk damaging it and affecting your front braking ability. Once you feed it through the fairing shroud, you can then wrap it around the caliper mounting banjo bolt, and if you have any excess, just wrap it around the front brake hose. Once that's secured in place, you can then remove the remaining caliper bolt if you left it in place. Once you remove that bolt, it will allow you some wiggle room to remove the two right side outermost pads. There are two pads on the right side as well as two pads on the left side. Now the left side, from sitting on the bike, you will not be able to remove up until you remove the axle and lower the wheel. The side I'm showing you right now is currently the right outermost side when sitting on the bike. After the pads are removed on the right side, the next step is you'll want to remove the pinch bolts on the left lower fork leg. The size of the bolt is a 7/32 Allen key or an Allen socket, and there's two of them to remove. Once the two lower leg pinch bolts are removed, you can then go on to the axle. To remove your axle, you will need a 22mm axle nut removal tool. If you've misplaced or lost your original unit that came with the bike, you can actually use a 22mm outside diameter lug nut by roughly 1.5 inches in length. You can see that here. I have used this in the past. Unfortunately, I do not have the part number for you, but it can be had at any local parts store. Because I did retain my original unit on this bike, I will show you the removal process with the actual tool. If you notice on the lower left-hand leg of the Ford, you can see it's stamped left-handed thread, which is clockwise, to remove the axle. Once that axle is removed, you can lower the wheel down. Be careful, the caliper is still going to want to rest on the rotor, so you will need to maneuver it out off the rotor. Once you do this, the other two left side pads will drop right out. Once that happens, you can push the caliper the rest of the way to the side and remove the wheel. After directly removing the front wheel, you want to double check and make sure your mechanic's wire is holding the weight of the caliper. Again, if not, you risk damaging your front brake hose, which can ultimately lead to poor front braking. After you do that, there's 3 remaining pinch bolts, 1 on the upper triple tree and then 2 located on the lower triple tree. The bolts on these are a 7/32 Allen key or an Allen socket. Once these pinch bolts are broken loose with the Allen key, they are easily removed with your hands. Because it's hard to video from the top, a lower angle makes it a little easier to see. Once you remove the 3 pinch bolts, again 1 in the upper triple tree and 2 in the lower triple tree, you can then begin to lower the fork roughly an inch or 2 down, locating the snap ring, which is directly below the upper triple tree. I recommend wrapping the fork around in tape right around the snap ring in case you use a screwdriver, just so you prevent from destroying the finish on your fork. In this case, I did not need a screwdriver, and I can actually remove it by hand. Once that small snap ring is removed, you can then remove the fork just by sliding it through the triple trees. You could then set the left side down and begin the same process on the right. Now that you disassembled and removed your opposing fork, you've now completed the disassembly on your Buell 1125 CR or R model. I can now go on to my step 3, which is disassembling and reassembling the forks. Thanks for watching.